Great. Thank you for that answer. So why do vegans and non-vegans struggle with relationships and communication?
Well, there are a lot of reasons for this. One reason is because vegans and non-vegans are people, and people struggle with relationships and communication, right? So it doesn't matter who you are. Most of us have never gotten a single formal lesson. When you think about it, right? Most of us have to learn complicated geometry that we'll probably never need to use, and yet we don't get a single formal lesson in how to be healthy relational beings and how to communicate effectively. And when you think of some of the most pressing problems in the world, these are not caused by people who don't know how to do geometry. So most of us stumble through our relationships and do the best we can with what we have. And that what we have is what we learned from our parents, who are generally not the best role models for most of us, from the dominant culture, from Hollywood. And, so people struggle in relationships and communication. On top of this, however, whenever there's like a fairly significant ideological, or lifestyle difference, that makes it very difficult for people, even more difficult for people to relate across the difference. And then when we're talking about this difference with Carnism and veganism, that complicates things even further. I've just been talking about Carnism, and, as you may imagine, say you have somebody who stepped outside of the carnistic box, and mindset, and now they're plant-based or vegan. And they're trying to relate to somebody who's internalized this defensiveness against their very way of being. That's not easy, And then on top of it, many people who are no longer participating in Carnism, who are vegan, who are, eating a plant-based diet, have also developed a particular psychology, a reactive psychology. It's a psychology, I call it reactive vegan, if I can pronounce it, reactive vegan psychology. It's a reaction to the living in the dominant carnistic culture. So when you're awake to this, the atrocity that is Carnism, your whole life can really change. And, whether you're sort of motivated to not eat animals for more ideological, or philosophical reasons, and you call yourself a vegan, or you're just following, I don't want to say just, but you're following a plant-based diet and lifestyle, and you're not really that ideologically oriented, you can still end up having very similar experiences. You become a part of a small minority, of the population. And, the way that I say it, try to describe it is, it's, feminists in the 1970s said, we don't see different things, we see the same things differently. And, once you step out of this carnistic mindset, you're seeing the same things differently. You're sitting at Thanksgiving dinner with your family, and there's a turkey on the table that you may have, once celebrated with them, and all of a sudden there's a carcass in front of you, and all you can do is try to stop the images of horrific animal suffering from coming into your mind. Or all you can do is try not to think about the fact that your Uncle Bob has already had 2 open heart surgeries and now is digging into, the lemon meringue pie. It's kind of crazy making, when you wake up and you start to look around and you see this atrocity happening and you see the consequences of it, and everybody around you is, you're working to clean up the mess made by others, and everybody around you is acting like something's wrong with you, because you care, because you're basically following the values that everybody supposedly shares with you, So it can be very difficult to relate across this difference, because, on one hand, you've got the carnistic mentality that's creating defensiveness against the vegan. And then you've got the reactive vegan psychology, whereby there is, very often we have seen graphic images of animal suffering, and that can be very triggering for people, very upsetting for people. Very often we're looking at people in our families who we know are sick or we fear are sick, and they don't want to hear anything we have to say, and they're calling us biased. And that can be very, very difficult. And so the good news is that there's a way around this, because we see each other as the enemy. And really, it's about shifting perspectives so that we recognize that in a relationship, and I'm not just talking about an intimate relationship, any relationship, in a relationship where one person eats animals and the other person does not, we can say, this is not just a relationship of two, it's a relationship of three. And the third element in that relationship, what we call in psychology, triangulating that relationship, is carnism. You're in a relationship with this invisible entity that is carnism. You can't see it, but it is profoundly influencing the way that you think about each other and the way that you interact with each other. And with a shift of perspective, you can say, you know what? You and I are going to become allies against carnism. We don't need carnism to create us, to make us feel like opponents with one another. And in my book, Beyond Beliefs, which is a guide to improving relationships and communication among vegans, vegetarians, and meat eaters, I talk about ways to do this. And one important step is like really learning about carnism and this psychology. And then also learning about reactive vegan psychology and the ways that we've been conditioned to think so that we end up fighting with each other rather than, working together to create a more harmonious relationship.